3 nights ago, at exactly 2:47 a.m., Jesus woke me up to show me something that's happening right now in the next 72 hours to believers all over the world. And I'm not talking about some vague spiritual principle. I'm talking about specific, tangible signs that mark who's actually ready for what's coming. What he showed me about these signs, and who's missing them entirely, left me shaking in my bed until sunrise. The people who think they're most prepared, the ones with the Bible studies, the prayer groups, the ministry positions, they're the ones walking right past these markers without even seeing them. Before we begin, tell me one thing you're praying for right now in the comments. I want to pray with you by name. And if you're a true believer in Christ, if you've genuinely repented, if you have saving faith, if you're truly following Jesus, please subscribe. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been taught about readiness. I need to know there are believers out there who are awake, watching, and ready. So I was on set that day. We'd just finished filming a scene where Jesus heals the blind man, the one who was born blind, and everyone's asking whose sin caused it. And I don't know, something about that question it stuck with me. The disciples asking the wrong question entirely, looking for blame when Jesus was about to reveal glory. I got back to my hotel room around 11 that night, exhausted. I mean, when you spend 12 hours portraying Jesus, there's this weight that follows you home. It's hard to explain. I took off the costume, but I couldn't quite take off the questions. I kept thinking about that blind man, about wrong assumptions, about how the religious people of that time completely missed what God was doing right in front of them. I prayed before bed like I always do. Nothing fancy, just, Jesus, help me represent you well. Help me point people to you and not to myself. Standard stuff. I fell asleep probably around midnight. At 2:47 a.m., I know because I looked at my phone, I woke up, but it wasn't like normal waking up. My heart was already pounding before my eyes even opened, and the room felt, I don't know how to describe it, thick, like the air had substance to it. I sat up in bed, and I could see my hotel room, clearly the chair in the corner, the curtains, the glow of the city lights coming through the window, but I also saw something else. Someone else. Jesus was standing at the foot of my bed. Now, I know what you're thinking. I play Jesus on TV. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe my mind was just processing the day's work. Trust me, I thought that too. I squeezed my eyes shut, opened them again. He was still there. But this wasn't the Jesus from our show. This was the weight of his presence made it hard to breathe. The kindness in his eyes mixed with something that looked like grief. Jonathan, he said, my actual name. Not my character's name. I need to show you something that's happening right now. In the next 72 hours, I'm marking my people, but most of them don't know how to recognize the signs. I couldn't speak. Literally couldn't get words out. My mouth was dry, my hands were shaking. He stepped closer, and I noticed he was wearing simple clothes like a regular person you'd pass on the street. Nothing glowing or angelic. But his eyes, when he looked at me, it felt like he could see every moment of my life simultaneously. You asked me to help you point people to me, he continued. So I'm going to show you what I'm doing right now, in real time. But you need to see first how many of my people are missing it entirely. He held out his hand, and suddenly the hotel room fell away. I was still sitting on my bed, but I could see. I don't know how to explain this. It was like watching multiple screens at once, but not screens, real life, real people happening right now. I'm going to send signs to my people over the next 72 hours, Jesus said. Specific markers that will identify who's actually awake, who's actually listening, who's actually mine. But watch what happens. The first scene he showed me was a woman, maybe mid-50s, sitting in her home office at her computer. The timestamp in my vision said 3 a.m. She couldn't sleep, was scrolling through social media. Suddenly her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. It just said, I haven't forgotten you. Watch for me in the unexpected. I watched her read it. She stared at it for a moment, and I could feel in my spirit that this was one of the signs Jesus was talking about. A marker, a divine appointment. But then she deleted it. Probably a wrong number, she muttered and went back to scrolling. Do you see? Jesus asked me, and his voice had this ache in it. She prayed for 3 weeks for a sign that I'm real, that I hear her. I just sent it. She deleted it. But Jesus, I said, and I was surprised I could. Talk now. It was just a text from a random number. How is she supposed to know that's you? He looked at me with such patience. Jonathan, when you're truly seeking me, when your spirit is truly awake, you recognize my voice. She's not listening for my actual voice. She's listening for the voice she expects, the sign she's designed in her mind. He showed me more. A man driving to work, and he passes a homeless person holding a sign. The sign says, "God told me to stand here today." Do you know why? The driver, and somehow I knew he was a worship leader at his church. He glanced at it, shook his head at the craziness of it, and drove on. That man stood there because I told him to. Jesus said quietly, "That driver has led worship for 8 years, but he drove right past me." "Wait," I said, my mind racing. "You're saying you're in the homeless man?" "I'm saying I sent the homeless man to deliver a message, but my worship leader has decided what my signs should look like. He's expecting lightning and thunder, so he misses the whisper." Then Jesus showed me something that made my stomach drop. A teenage girl couldn't have been more than 16, sitting in her school cafeteria. She was eating alone, scrolling through her phone, and she felt this sudden, overwhelming urge to text a specific friend. Just, "I'm praying for you today. You're not alone." I watched her fingers hover over her phone. The urge was so strong, but then I saw her thoughts like I could read them somehow. "That's weird. She'll think I'm weird. We don't even text like that." She put her phone away. Jesus's face. I can't describe the pain on his face. The friend she almost texted, he said, is planning to end her life tonight. That message would have saved her. But my daughter chose social comfort over obedience. I felt like I'd been punched. "Jesus, no. Can't you send someone else?" "Can't you?" "I am sending someone else," he interrupted gently. "But do you see the pattern? I'm moving, I'm speaking, I'm marking my people with opportunities to see me, to hear me, to obey me. These next 72 hours, Jonathan, I'm doing this all over the world. But my people have been taught to wait for the spectacular. They've been taught to look for burning bushes when I'm speaking through strangers. They've been taught to expect earthquakes when I'm knocking through a gentle knock on the door." He showed me scene after scene. A man who ignored a sudden, specific thought to call his father because he was too busy. A woman who drove past a car broken down on the highway because she didn't feel safe. A pastor who deleted an email from someone in crisis because it came to his personal account instead of through proper channels. Every single one, Jesus identified as a missed sign, a missed marker, a missed divine appointment in the next 72 hours. "But Jesus," I said, and I was crying now, "how are they supposed to know? How do we know what's you and what's just random life?" He sat down on the edge of my bed. Actually sat down. "Jonathan, I've given my spirit to those who are mine. When you're walking closely with me, when you're actually listening, you feel it, that whisper in your spirit that says, 'Pay attention to this.' That sudden urge that doesn't make logical sense but won't leave you alone. That divine interruption to your plans that you explain away as coincidence. The problem isn't that my people can't hear me," he continued. "The problem is they've been taught to ignore the very ways I speak. They've been taught to analyze everything, to test everything against their theology, to make sure it fits their expectations. So when I move in the unexpected, they miss it entirely." I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. "So what are you saying? What are these signs? What should people be watching for?" Jesus stood up, and suddenly I was back in my hotel room fully, but he was still there. "Tomorrow night, I'm going to show you what the actual signs look like. The specific markers I'm placing in the next 72 hours. But first, you needed to see this, the condition of my church. They're waiting for me to show up the way they've decided I should show up. Meanwhile, I'm walking right past them and they don't even recognize me." He moved toward the window, looked out at the city. "They've turned readiness into a checklist. Bible study check, prayer time check, church attendance check. But readiness isn't about religious activity. It's about recognition. It's about ears that can hear my voice in the unexpected, eyes that can see me in the interruptions, hearts that obey when I call even when it doesn't make sense." I sat there on my bed, my heart still pounding. "How many are missing it?" I asked. "How many are going to miss the signs?" He turned back to me, and the grief on his face was overwhelming. "Most of them. Most of my people are so busy doing things for me that they can't hear me when I'm speaking to them. They're so focused on their programs, their schedules, their plans, that they walk right past the appointments I've arranged. But there's still time, he added, and a hint of hope entered his voice. That's why I'm showing you this. The next 72 hours, Jonathan. I'm placing specific signs, specific markers, specific divine appointments in front of my people. Those who see them, who recognize them, who respond, they're marked, they're ready. They're actually mine in a way that goes beyond religious profession. What happens if they miss them? I asked. But before he could answer, the room lightened. Dawn was breaking through the curtains. Jesus faded, not dramatically, just was no longer there. And I was sitting on my bed in a hotel room in Texas, shaking, sweating, with tear stains on my face. I looked at my phone. 6:13 a.m. I'd been in that vision for over 3 hours, but it felt like minutes. I didn't go back to sleep. I couldn't. I kept thinking about that teenage girl, about the text she didn't send, about the worship leader who drove past the homeless man, about all those people praying for signs while dismissing the ones God was actually sending. That whole day on set, I couldn't focus. Every time someone interrupted my plans, every time something unexpected happened, I wondered, is this one of the signs? Is this God speaking? And I started really noticing how often I myself dismiss these moments. How often I'm so locked into my schedule, my plans, my expectations, that I could easily miss God if he showed up differently than I anticipated. That night, I went back to my hotel room with this mix of dread and anticipation, because Jesus said he'd show me more. He said he'd show me what the actual signs look like, what we're supposed to be watching for in these next 72 hours. I didn't know if I wanted to see it, because if the first part was that devastating, what was coming next? The second night, I almost didn't want to go to sleep. I know that sounds strange, but I was scared. Scared of what Jesus would show me. Scared that I'd see myself in those missed opportunities. Scared that I'd realize I'm one of those people who's been missing him all along. But exhaustion won out. I fell asleep around 1 a.m. This time when I woke up, it was 3:17 a.m. exactly, and Jesus was already there, standing by the window looking out at the city lights. He didn't turn around right away, just spoke quietly. "Are you ready to see what I'm actually doing?" he asked. I sat up, pulled my knees to my chest. "I think so. I don't know if anyone's really ready for this, but yes." He turned then, and there was this intensity in his eyes. Not anger, more like urgency. "What I'm about to show you, these are the actual signs. The markers I'm placing in front of my people over 72 hours. But Jonathan, you need to understand something first. These signs aren't what the church has been teaching people to look for." "What do you mean?" "The church has taught people to wait for confirmation, to look for certainty, to expect clarity. But faith doesn't work that way. Faith is recognizing me in the unclear, in the risky, in the uncomfortable. The signs I'm sending require people to step out before they have all the answers." He walked closer, sat in the chair across from my bed. "I'm going to show you 7 types of signs I'm placing in these 72 hours. 7 markers. And every single believer, everyone who claims to be mine, will encounter at least 3 of them. How they respond determines whether they're marked as ready or not." My heart started racing again. 7 signs, I repeated. "The first sign," Jesus said, and suddenly that dual reality thing happened again. I could see my hotel room, but also see these scenes playing out as the divine interruption. I saw a woman, probably in her late 40s, professional clothes, rushing through an airport. She was late for her flight, stressed, checking her watch, constantly. As she hurried past a gate, she heard crying. A young mother with 2 small kids, one of them having a complete meltdown. The woman glanced over, that split-second decision moment we all have. Keep walking, or stop and help. Watch her spirit, Jesus said, and somehow I could see it like a physical manifestation. There was this pull toward the crying mother, an actual, tangible urge from the Holy Spirit to stop. But I also saw the woman's thoughts. "I'm already late. Someone else will help. I'm not good with kids anyway. I don't even know what I'd do." She kept walking. "That was the sign," Jesus said softly. "In the next 72 hours, I'm interrupting schedules, plans, carefully laid agendas. I'm placing situations in front of people that make absolutely no sense for their timeline. The divine interruption isn't convenient. It's not efficient. It requires you to sacrifice your plan for mine. But she was already late for her flight, I protested. Jesus looked at me with such patience. She was late for her flight, but she was right on time for my appointment. That young mother, she's on the edge of a breakdown. She's questioning whether God cares, whether he sees her struggle. That woman passing by, I've been preparing her for 6 months for this exact moment. She's been praying for opportunities to share my love. I just gave her one. She missed it because her schedule mattered more than my interruption. I felt sick because I do this all the time. I have my plans, my to-do lists, my schedule, and when God interrupts, I'm annoyed. The second sign, Jesus continued, showing me another scene, is the impossible ask. This time, I saw a college student, early 20s, sitting in a coffee shop studying. His phone buzzed. A text from a friend. Hey man, I know this is random, but I need $300 by tomorrow. My electricity's about to be shut off. Can you help? I watched the student read it, watched him check his bank account. He had $425 total. Rent was due in a week. And I could actually see that whisper in his spirit, that prompting from the Holy Spirit. Give it. But the logical thoughts flooded in. That's not wise stewardship. I have my own bills. What if this is enabling bad financial decisions? I should teach him about budgeting instead. He texted back, I'm really tight right now, man. But I can send you some resources about financial planning. Jesus stood up and he looked. I don't know. Disappointed isn't quite the right word. Grieved. The impossible ask is when I tell my people to do something that doesn't make financial sense, that doesn't make logical sense, that requires them to trust me instead of their bank account. That young man has been praying for deeper faith. I just gave him an opportunity, but he chose financial security over obedience. But Jesus, I said, it really wasn't wise. He has rent due. I know exactly when his rent is due. Jesus interrupted gently but firmly. I also know that 2 days from now, his boss was going to give him an unexpected bonus of $500. But more than that, that friend who texted him, he's been resistant to the gospel for years. The only thing that would crack his heart open is seeing radical, illogical generosity, the kind that doesn't make sense unless God is real. I was going to use that $300 gift to save his soul. But my son chose safety over obedience. I felt like I couldn't breathe. How many times have I done this? How many times have I heard that whisper to give, to help, to sacrifice, and I've calculated my way out of obedience? The third sign, Jesus said, and his voice got quieter, is the uncomfortable truth. I saw a man middle-aged, sitting in his living room with his wife. They were talking about their daughter's wedding. The daughter was marrying someone who wasn't a believer, and they were discussing whether to say something or not. She's an adult, the wife said. It's her choice. The man felt it, that conviction in his spirit. Say something. Speak truth. Warn her. But it was uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. It would create conflict. Might damage the relationship. Maybe we're being too judgmental, he said out loud. Maybe we should just love and support her. Jesus' face. The pain on his face. That's not love, he said to me. Love speaks truth even when it's costly. That man felt my spirit clearly telling him to have a hard conversation with his daughter, not to condemn her, but to warn her, to explain what unequal yoking does to faith. But he chose peace over truth, comfort over obedience. In these 72 hours, Jesus continued, I'm putting uncomfortable truths in front of my people, conversations they need to have, corrections they need to make, stands they need to take. These truths won't be popular. They won't be easy, but they're necessary. And those who speak them, even when it costs them, they're marked as mine. He showed me more signs, one after another. The fourth was what he called the humbling test, situations where people are asked to serve in ways beneath their station, beneath their education, beneath their position. A CEO feeling prompted to volunteer at a homeless shelter. A pastor feeling called to clean toilets at the church. A worship leader being asked to set up chairs instead of being on stage. I watched person after person rationalize their way out. That's not the best use of my gifts. Someone else could do that better. I need to focus on my calling. They've confused status with significance, Jesus said. They think importance with me looks like importance in the world, but I'm looking for servants. Humble, willing, unglamorous servants. The fifth sign he called the silent season. This one was different. He showed me people who were going through dry spells, no dramatic answers to prayer, no clear direction, no feelings of his presence. And in their confusion, they were being tempted to create their own solutions, to force open doors, to manipulate circumstances. The silent season is when I'm most active, Jesus explained, but I'm working beneath the surface. I'm rewiring their hearts. I'm teaching them to trust me without feelings, without signs, without confirmation. Those who stay faithful in the silence, who keep obeying even when they don't feel me, they're proving their faith is real. The sixth sign broke me. He called it the hidden sin. He showed me believers, good believers, church-going believers, and the secret sins they were harboring. Pornography, addiction, affairs, bitterness. And in these 72 hours, Jesus was bringing those sins to the surface, not to condemn, but to heal. He was giving specific convictions, specific opportunities to confess, specific moments to come clean. I watched a woman sitting in her car outside her church, feeling overwhelming conviction about the gossip she'd been spreading about another member. She absolutely knew she needed to go inside and apologize. Make it right, the Holy Spirit was pressing so clearly. But shame held her back, pride, fear of looking bad. "I'll do it later," she whispered. "When the timing's better." "There is no later," Jesus said to me, his voice thick with emotion. "That relationship is dying. That church is splitting. All because my people won't deal with their hidden sin when I bring it to light. I'm giving her this moment, this 72-hour window to make it right. But she's choosing her reputation over repentance." "Jesus," I said, and I was crying again, "this is too hard. These tests are too hard." He looked at me with such love mixed with such seriousness. "Jonathan, these aren't tests I'm inventing to trip people up. These are the basic marks of genuine faith. Divine interruptions, that's just basic obedience. Impossible asks, that's just basic trust. Uncomfortable truths, that's just basic love. Humility, faithfulness in silence, dealing with sin, these aren't advanced Christianity. This is Christianity, period. But we've created a version of faith," he continued, "that requires none of this. We've created a Christianity that fits comfortably into people's existing lives, that doesn't interrupt their plans, that doesn't challenge their wallets, that doesn't risk their relationships, that doesn't humble their pride, that doesn't require them to sit in silence or deal with their sin. And that version of Christianity, it's not mine." I was shaking now, because I was seeing myself in every single one of these, every sign, every missed opportunity. "The seventh sign," Jesus said, standing up, "is the one most people will miss entirely. I call it recognition." He showed me a scene that seemed so ordinary. A man standing in line at a grocery store. In front of him, an elderly woman fumbling with her wallet, embarrassed because she didn't have enough money for her items. The cashier was getting impatient. The people in line behind were sighing. The man felt it, that, pay for her groceries. But more than that, a deeper knowing. That's me. That's me in front of you. But logic kicked in. That's not Jesus. That's just a random old lady. This is just coincidence. I'm being emotional. He didn't help her. Recognition, Jesus said, turning to me, is the ability to see me in the faces of others, to recognize my voice in the unexpected, to know when something isn't coincidence but divine appointment. I told my disciples that when they helped the least of these, they were helping me. I wasn't speaking metaphorically. I was speaking literally. In these 72 hours, I'm showing up in human form everywhere. The stranger who needs help, the beggar who needs a meal, the friend who needs a listener, the enemy who needs forgiveness. I'm there. I'm showing up. And those who recognize me not with their eyes but with their spirit, they're marked as mine. He walked to the window again, and the scene stopped. We were just in my hotel room now. "So, you see," he said quietly, "this isn't about supernatural signs and wonders. This isn't about messages in the sky or angelic visitations. This is about whether my people can recognize my voice in everyday moments, whether they'll obey when it costs them something, whether their faith is real or just theoretical." "How many will pass?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jesus was quiet for a long moment. "Few, so few, Jonathan. Because most of my people are waiting for the spectacular while I'm speaking through the ordinary. They're waiting for the comfortable while I'm calling them to the costly. They're waiting for certainty while I'm requiring faith. But here's what breaks my heart most. He continued, and when he turned to face me, there were tears in his eyes, actual tears. These people I'm showing you, they're not the obvious failures. They're not the ones who've walked away from faith. They're the faithful church members, the Bible study leaders, the prayer warriors, the volunteers. On the outside, they look like they're doing everything right, but they can't hear my voice when it matters. They can't recognize my tests when I give them. They've confused religious activity with actual relationship. I was full on sobbing now. Jesus, am I one of them? Have I been missing you? He came and sat on the edge of my bed again, put his hand on my shoulder. I felt it, actually felt the weight and warmth of his hand. Jonathan, why do you think I'm showing you this? You've been missing. Me too. Everyone has. But there's still time. These next 72 hours, they're not just about testing. They're about mercy. I'm giving my people clear opportunities to wake up, to recognize me, to respond. The signs are everywhere. The question is whether they'll have eyes to see and ears to hear. The room was getting lighter. Dawn again. But before he faded, he said one more thing. Tomorrow night, I'm going to show you what happens to those who pass the signs, and what happens to those who don't. You need to see both, because people need to understand what's actually at stake here. And then he was gone. I sat there as the sun came up, going through my phone, my calendar, my plans for the day, and I started asking myself, how many divine interruptions have I missed this week? How many impossible asks have I rationalized away? How many uncomfortable truths have I avoided? How many times has Jesus shown up in front of me, and I've been too busy, too logical, too comfortable to recognize him? The worst part? I couldn't count them, because if I missed them, I don't even know they happened. All day on set, I was different. When someone interrupted my preparation time, instead of being annoyed, I stopped and asked myself, is this one of the signs? When I felt a prompting to encourage someone, instead of dismissing it, I obeyed. When I saw someone struggling, instead of assuming someone else would help, I helped. And you know what I noticed? The signs are everywhere. Everywhere. God is speaking constantly, moving constantly, creating divine appointments constantly. We're just not paying attention. That night, going back to my hotel, I was terrified. Because Jesus said he was going to show me what happens to those who pass the signs and those who don't. And something in his tone told me this final part would be the hardest to hear. The third night, I didn't even try to sleep normally. I just sat on my bed, waiting, praying. Honestly, I was shaking. Because something about these visions, they weren't just showing me other people's failures, they were showing me my own missed opportunities, my own rationalizations, my own comfortable faith that never cost me anything. At 2:34 a.m., Jesus appeared. But this time, he looked different. More, I don't know how to explain it. There was an authority in his presence that hadn't been there before. Not harsh, but absolute. Like I was seeing more of who he really is. Are you ready? He asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. What I'm about to show you is happening right now, he said. In the spiritual realm, as people respond to these signs over the next 72 hours, they're being marked, sealed, set apart. And others, he paused, and the grief was back in his eyes. Others are revealing that they were never truly mine to begin with. Wait, I said, finding my voice. You're saying people are losing their salvation? No, Jesus said firmly. I'm saying people are revealing they never had it. Jonathan, I told you clearly, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father. These signs, these 7 markers, they're not arbitrary tests. They're revealing what's actually in people's hearts. Who actually knows my voice? Who's actually willing to follow me when it costs them something? He moved closer. Let me show you what I mean. Suddenly I was seeing split screens again, but this time, 2 different responses to the same situation. The divine interruption from before that woman rushing through the airport who passed the crying mother. Watch what happens when someone passes the test, Jesus said. I saw a different woman, different airport, same situation, rushing for a flight, late, stressed, past a struggling mother with screaming kids. And I saw that same pull, that prompting from the Holy Spirit to stop and help. This woman stopped. She looked at her watch, looked at the gate, looked at the mother, and I could see the battle in her spirit. Every logical reason to keep walking. But then she whispered, "Okay, Jesus, I trust you." She walked over to the mother, knelt down to the child's level. "Hey there, buddy. Can I help your mama?" Within minutes, she'd calmed the child, helped the mother get reorganized, even carried one of the bags to their gate. "I'm going to miss my flight," the woman said, but she was smiling. "No, you're not," the mother said, looking at her with tears. "Your flight's at gate 47, right? That's my gate, that's my flight." And then Jesus showed me something that made my breath catch. There was this, I don't know how to describe it, a mark, like a seal. It appeared over the woman's heart, not physical, but spiritual, visible in the realm Jesus was showing me. "She's marked," he said quietly. "She heard my voice. She obeyed despite the cost. She trusted me over her logic, and now she's sealed as mine for what's coming." "What's coming?" I asked, but he didn't answer yet. Instead, he showed me more. The college student who didn't give the $300. He showed me a different college student in the exact same situation. Same impossible ask. Same limited funds. Same logical reasons to say no. But this one obeyed. Sent the money, even though rent was due. Even though it didn't make sense. "I trust you, Jesus," he whispered as he hit send. That same mark appeared. That seal over his heart. "But what about his rent?" I asked. Jesus smiled, first time I'd seen him smile in these visions. "Watch." 3 days later, the student got a call from a scholarship foundation. A donor had specifically requested him for a one-time grant of $1,500. No application needed, just a gift. "This is what my people don't understand," Jesus said. "When you obey the impossible ask, when you trust me with your resources, I don't just replace what you gave, I multiply it. But more than that, you prove your faith is real. You prove that I'm more important than your security." He showed me, person after person, who passed the tests. The man who spoke the uncomfortable truth to his daughter, and yes, it caused conflict, but it also opened a door for real conversation about faith that led to her reconsidering the marriage. The CEO who volunteered at the homeless shelter and discovered her actual calling. The woman who confessed her gossip and watched God heal not just that relationship, but her own soul. Each one received that mark, that seal. "What is that mark?" I asked. "What does it mean?" Jesus turned to me, and his face was serious. "It means they're ready. When everything shakes, when everything falls apart, when I separate the wheat from the chaff, these are the ones who'll stand. Not because they're perfect, but because they know my voice and they follow me, actually follow me, not just talk about following me." Then his face grew dark. "But now you need to see the others." The scene shifted. I saw the woman who deleted the text message that said, "I haven't forgotten you." It was 72 hours later now. She was sitting in her church, singing worship songs, hands raised, tears streaming down her face. She looked so sincere, so devoted, but when Jesus showed me the spiritual realm, there was no mark, no seal, just emptiness. She prayed for signs but rejected the sign I sent. Jesus said, "She's worshiping an idea of me, a version of me she's created in her mind, but she doesn't know my actual voice." He showed me the worship leader who drove past the homeless man with the sign. Now he was leading worship at his church, passionate, skilled, the whole congregation was moved. But spiritually, nothing. No mark, no seal. "He serves me on his terms," Jesus said, "in the ways that feel comfortable to him, in the ways that look good. But when I show up in a way that challenges him, he drives right past me, person after person who'd failed the tests. They all looked like good Christians, active in church, reading their Bibles, praying, serving. But when I saw them in the spiritual realm, there was no mark. They weren't sealed." "Jesus," I said, my voice shaking, "what happens to them?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Jonathan, I've been warning my people for 2,000 years. I told them that many would say, 'Lord, Lord,' but not enter the kingdom. I told them that the road is narrow and few find it. I told them to examine themselves to make sure they're in the faith. But the church stopped preaching that. They started preaching that everyone who prays a prayer is saved, everyone who attends church is fine, everyone who believes in their mind is secure. But real faith, he continued, real salvation, it produces real change, real obedience, real transformation. You can't truly know me and not recognize my voice. You can't truly have my spirit and not be prompted to obey. You can't truly be mine and live a life that's indistinguishable from the world except for a few hours on Sunday. These 72 hours, these 7 signs, I'm not creating new requirements. I'm revealing what was always required. I'm exposing what's actually in people's hearts. And so many of my so-called people are failing every single test. I felt like the room was spinning. So what do they need to do? How do they get marked? How do they pass the tests? Jesus looked at me with such intensity. First, they need to wake up. They need to realize that this comfortable Christianity they've been living, it's not Christianity at all. Christianity is costly, it's disruptive, it requires surrender, complete surrender. Second, they need to learn my voice. Not just learn about me, actually know me, spend time with me, listen for me in the silence, recognize me in the unexpected. My sheep know my voice, Jonathan. If you don't recognize my voice in the everyday, you won't recognize it when it matters most. Third, and his voice got even more serious, they need to obey. Not when it's convenient, not when it makes sense, not when it fits their schedule. Immediate obedience, costly obedience, radical obedience. That's what faith looks like in action. He walked to the window, and I could see the city waking up outside. Dawn coming. The good news, he said, is that it's not too late. Not yet. These 72 hours aren't over for most people. The signs are still coming, the opportunities are still there. Someone watching or reading this right now, they're in their 72-hour window. The signs are in front of them. The question is whether they'll have eyes to see. How will they know? I asked. How will people watching this know which signs are for them? Jesus turned back to me, and there was this mix of seriousness and hope in his expression. They'll feel it, that prompting in their spirit, that divine interruption to their day, that impossible ask that doesn't make logical sense, that uncomfortable truth they need to speak, that humbling task they need to do, that silent season they need to trust through, that hidden sin they need to confess, that moment of recognition when they see me in someone else. It won't feel comfortable, he continued. It won't feel safe. It will require them to step out in faith before they have all the answers. But if they're truly mine, they'll recognize it. They'll feel that pull. That knowing deep in their spirit that says, this is God, this is the moment, this is the test. And if they obey, I asked, they'll be marked, Jesus said simply, sealed, set apart, ready for what's coming. And what is coming? Jesus was quiet for a moment then. A shaking, a separation, a revealing of who's really mine and who's just been playing church. It's already starting, Jonathan. These 72-hour windows, I'm giving people their acts of mercy. Final opportunities to prove their faith is real, to show they can hear my voice and follow me. Because when everything shakes, only those who are firmly rooted in me, who actually know me, who've been trained to recognize and obey my voice, only they will stand. The room was fully light now. Jesus started to fade. But before he disappeared completely, he said, tell them this, Jonathan. Tell them that the signs are everywhere. In the next 72 hours, they will encounter at least 3 of the 7 markers. They will feel that prompting, that pull, that divine appointment, and how they respond will reveal everything. Tell them to stop waiting for the spectacular and start as time, paying attention to the ordinary. Stop waiting for certainty and start stepping out in faith. Stop protecting their comfort and start obeying my voice. And tell them this most importantly, I'm not trying to trick them. I'm not trying to catch them off guard. I'm trying to wake them up. Every sign is an invitation. Every test is an opportunity. Every divine appointment is mercy, because I want them to be ready. I want them to be marked as mine. I want them to stand when everything shakes. But they have to choose it. They have to respond. They have to obey. And then he was gone. I sat there as the sun filled my hotel room, and I did something I've never done before. I got on my knees, literally on my knees, and I prayed, Jesus, show me. In my next 72 hours, show me the signs. Give me the tests. Let me prove my faith is real. I don't want to be one of the ones who looks good on the outside but has no mark, no seal. I want to actually be yours. Completely, radically, costly. yours. And I meant it. Because after seeing those visions, after seeing the difference between those who passed and those who failed, I couldn't go back to comfortable Christianity. I couldn't go back to religion without relationship, activity without obedience, knowledge without transformation. So here's what I need you to hear. Right now, as you're listening to this, you're in your window. You're 72 hours. The signs are there. Maybe you felt it while watching this, that prompting to text someone, to give something, to confess something, to help someone. Maybe right now there's a divine interruption you've been ignoring, an impossible ask you've been rationalizing away, an uncomfortable truth you've been avoiding. That's the sign. That's your marker. That's Jesus testing whether your faith is real or just theoretical. And I know it's scary. I know it doesn't make sense. I know it's going to cost you something, maybe money, maybe comfort, maybe a relationship, maybe your schedule, maybe your pride. But that's what real faith looks like. Faith isn't believing God exists. Faith is trusting Him enough to obey when it's costly. Don't be one of the ones who fails every test while looking like a good Christian. Don't be one of the ones at church every Sunday, but without the mark, without the seal, without actual relationship with Jesus. Don't be one of the ones who prays for signs while dismissing every sign God sends. The next 72 hours matter, not because God is vindictive, but because He's merciful. He's giving you clear opportunities to show your faith is real, to prove you can hear His voice, to demonstrate you're actually His. So here's what I want you to do, and this is important. I want you to pray right now, right where you are. Ask Jesus, show me the signs, give me the tests. Help me recognize your voice and obey it no matter what it costs me. And then pay attention. Watch for the divine interruptions. Listen for the impossible asks. Be ready for the uncomfortable truths. Be willing to be humbled. Trust Him in the silent seasons. Deal with your hidden sin and look for Him in the faces of others. When you feel that pull, that prompting, that knowing in your spirit that's Him, that's your sign, that's your test. And you have to decide, will you obey, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it costs you something, even if it's uncomfortable and risky and requires faith? Because that decision, that moment of obedience or disobedience, it's revealing everything. It's showing whether you're actually His or just religious, whether you know His voice or just know about Him, whether your faith is real or just intellectual. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because Jesus is giving us mercy. He's giving us opportunities. He's placing signs and markers and divine appointments in our path because He wants us to be ready. He wants us to be sealed. He wants us to stand when everything shakes. But we have to choose it. We have to respond. We have to obey. So watch for it. In the next 72 hours, the signs are coming. Jesus is moving. The question is, will you have eyes to see and ears to hear? Will you obey even when it costs you? That's what separates those who are truly His from those who just play church. And if you're sitting there right now feeling convicted, feeling that pull, feeling like Jesus is speaking directly to you through this message, that's a sign too. That's Him, right now in this moment, inviting you to wake up, to really follow Him, to let your faith cost you something. Don't ignore it. Don't rationalize it away. Don't wait for a more convenient time. Obey, right now, whatever He's telling you to do, whoever He's telling you to contact, whatever He's telling you to give or confess or do. That obedience, that step of faith, that's what marks you as His. And I'm praying for you, everyone watching this, everyone reading this, I'm praying that in your next 72 hours you see the signs, you recognize His voice, and you obey. Because the time for comfortable Christianity is over. The time for theoretical faith is over. The time for playing church is over. Jesus is marking His people, and the only way to be marked is to prove you know His voice and you'll follow Him no matter what. Watch for the signs. They're everywhere, and when you see them, obey. Your 72 hours starts now.